Berlin enthusiast. Welcome to the Dreamy Berlin podcast. This is where I go out and chat to Berlin's coolest creators, founders, and free spirits of all those unique eco-minded projects in the capital. I do my very best to extract their stories, secrets, and passions to help you get lots and lots of inspiration of what you can do and experience in this magical city, and how we can all shake the world a little bit. Super glad to have you with me on this journey. Now let's go green in this urban jungle. And remember, always be prepared to be amazed. Hey fellow changemaker, what's up? Thank you so much for joining me today for session number 12 of the Dreamy Berlin podcast. Before we dive in, I just quickly wanted to express some gratitude for you, because it's super great to see that you keep tuning in. So I want to make sure that you know that I'm not taking you for granted. So massive thanks to those who left a review. Thanks for listening, for subscribing, for spreading the word. I know there's so much great free content out there, so I'm feeling really honored that you spend a bit of your time with me. And of course with those awesome Berlin changemakers I interview, because let's be honest, they're the real stars. And so is my guest on today's show. It's Lisa Jaspers. She's a female social entrepreneur that inspires me so much. She ditched her job at one of the world's biggest charity organizations to start FOLKDAYS. And FOLKDAYS is a Berlin-based fashion label that empowers artisans from some of the remotest corners in the world to make a living through their crafts. Seriously, each time I enter that store here in Kreuzberg, it's like going on a little journey to faraway lands and cultures. It's spreading a super positive, colorful, dreamy vibe and really takes me to places like Turkey, Cambodia, Nepal, India, Ethiopia, Kenya, Egypt, Palestine, Mexico, Guatemala, Peru, and. Because this is basically where all her artisans are from and where they're working at. And really everyone in the shop is happy to share all the stories behind each piece, and they're really, really exciting. And of course, Lisa knows all artisans in person, as she travels out to those hidden corners, searching for the most talented craftspeople and gives them a reason to believe into themselves. Super, super beautiful, guys. Apart from sharing the story of how this beautiful label was born and the what, how, and of course, especially the why behind FOLKDAYS, we also touched a lot into very personal things and thoughts, such as what it means to be a female entrepreneur and why we need more of them, why we all need to learn to believe in ourselves and our skills more, no matter if you're in Bangladesh or in Europe. We shared stories of traveling on the surface versus traveling deep, and what moved Lisa to the point where she actually wanted to stop traveling. You also learn why you'll never be a good entrepreneur if you're a perfectionist, and what's so important about surrounding yourself with the right people. And very important point, why we sometimes need to stop pushing ourselves too hard. And of course, we also talked about founding a social startup and building up an eco-label in Berlin. So the advantages and also the challenges of starting a sustainable brand in Berlin, and how Lisa feels about this peaceful chaos here. And you see, there's so much to get out of this. I had a blast talking to this inspiring woman and left the store really full of inspiration and new ideas, and I'm pretty sure you'll feel the same. So now sit back and relax. It's time to get into the show. Hey Lisa, so happy to welcome you on the show today. How are you?
I'm fine.
So good to see you here with you finally. We've been planning to meet for ages. You are the founder of FOLKDAYS. It's been founded in 2013 together with a group of friends. And in just a few years, you created an ethical fashion label that truly makes a difference out there. It's about connecting us to foreign places, long-standing traditions and crafts, and above all, the people behind them. Already browsing through your website, it really lets you travel around the world and dive deep into all these foreign lands, and there's so much brilliant stuff that you guys do and are involved in. Plus, you've got some seriously impressive media coverage out there. There's been features on the BBC, Vogue, Gestalten, Neon, Gründerszene, Nouveau Magazine, and like heaps and heaps of fashion and lifestyle media. And that makes me even more grateful that I can have you on the show here. And I want to learn everything about the what's, the hows, and the whys of FOLKDAYS, and of course about you and your passions and visions and ideas. So let's jump straight in. You told me that you basically have been on a trip recently to Indonesia. What did you do there?
I was in Indonesia in April, actually twice, for a workshop that we did a concept for the Goethe Institute. And the main goal was to connect 6 German designers with 6 artisan businesses from Southeast Asia. So what my goal was to more or less pass on everything I learned in regards to working with craftspeople over the last 4 years. So the input we gave was very much focused on how do you turn a craft into a product that is actually sellable, maybe even exportable, because of course it's always interesting to produce stuff for the local markets, but of course you can also imagine that some products, especially the ones that are based on very complex crafts, the prices that you need to charge for them, it's a lot easier to sell them in the European market, for example, which is our main business idea. So we had in total 5 days to transfer that kind of knowledge and develop products. And quite a bit of these products will actually be sold through FOLKDAYS beginning in January, February 2018.
Nice.
Which is super exciting and also a really nice and great way to develop products.
Yeah, I mean, sounds like a really, really great project, and really all about empowering people and sharing and passing knowledge. Already touching on this, I mean, FOLKDAYS is all about handmade, fair trade fashion and accessories coming from the original sources. If you had to put down, like apart from what we just said, like say maybe 3 major aspects about what FOLKDAYS means to you, what would they be?
I think probably the most important thing that FOLKDAYS means to me personally is that it creates opportunities for people who have already capabilities and strengths, and FOLKDAYS can actually help them generate an income through those. So it's really about market access and also creating economic development in areas where maybe it's usually not very easy to create jobs. A lot of our artisans work in really remote areas in the world. So, for example, most of the silk we produce in Cambodia is actually done by weavers in the Takeo province, who have their looms under their houses, and when they have a little time in between rice harvesting and taking care of the kids, they can sit down and start weaving for a couple of hours. And so for them, it's basically the first time they ever created an income for themselves. They used to be subsistence farmers usually. Maybe some of the men had jobs, but usually not the women, because they had to take care of the household and the rice field and the kids. And so I think this is something that I really, that is really special to me, and also, I guess, different to a lot of other sustainable brands.
Yeah. Cool, yeah, I mean, definitely, and it sounds all really great, and we're gonna touch into that like a little bit deeper in a little bit. But what do you think, or maybe it's the same, but what do you think is the one massive reason that connects people to your brand the most?
I hope that they like the combination of design and uniqueness. And I think that from my experience, and also, I mean, I talked to a lot of people since we now have a shop, and also in the past through pop-up shops, I think most people really buy our products because they like them. They really love the quality and they like the design. And I think having maybe sustainable or good impact on the people who produce them for us is definitely something that is even more convincing to them. But I think they wouldn't buy the stuff otherwise if they didn't really love it. So I think that's something that was really core for me from the beginning on. I didn't want to create a brand that is something that you can relieve your consciousness with, but you're never really happy about what you get. You know, I always wanted to not just do what the conventional industry does, but a little fairer, a little more eco-friendly. But I wanted to really create products that are different and that are unique and that have a story. And so I think that's what we really try to achieve. And I think what we also did achieve with most of our products, that people really love them. And it's a nice extra that they come from all over the world, and that you know that you can actually create an income for people with it.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I definitely see why they will love them. And I really, really love what you just said, because I totally agree with that, that we need products that look really, really nice, that draw people in, that just people want to wear. And then on top, it's also eco and sustainable. And this is kind of maybe people, they find your website or they hear about your brand and they come into the shop and they're just like, wow, and this is just beautiful. And yeah, I mean, this is the way to go. Not, I think before it used to be a bit more in the old-fashioned way. It used to be a bit more, okay, this is eco, so you should buy it, and no matter how it looks like. And I think this kind of really prevented it to become something accessible to many people, because you don't, either it's been like super, super high fashion, or it's been like kind of this super eco potato side thing.
I think a lot of the times fair fashion brands, and still, I mean, many of them are a trade-off, you know. You feel better, but you get a worse product.
And this is not the way to,
and not in the sense of maybe worse because it's also cotton, but usually I think sometimes ordering or just looking at fair fashion, there's often a quite big problem with quality. Because of course they don't, they haven't done this forever, and and I think we have to get rid of that trade-off, because otherwise people won't change their attitude, and also it won't change their behavior.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree about that, and I also love that. I mean, folk days. Maybe if you have a lot of fantasy, of course you could think that this implies something with sustainability, but it doesn't like necessarily label it, and it's just, okay, come in, have a look, and then fall in love, basically, and then I really, really think this is the way to go. Now the spotlight is on you, because your own background is pretty exciting too. You worked as a development aid consultant for Oxfam before, and I guess that made you see a lot of things, good and bad, but also gave you access to some really remote places and cultures. What kind of projects did you mainly work on?
So I was actually working for Oxfam. I didn't work as a consultant. I had another job after Oxfam where I worked as a consultant. So the first 2.5 years after I finished university, I worked for Oxfam, and I was with them. I was more working on communication issues. I actually built up something that's called Oxfam Unwrapped, Oxfam Unverpackt in Germany, and that was really like the idea of breaking down donations into some sort of products, so you could give a goat or give drinking water for 10 people. And I really like that approach of being very clear and transparent, and also telling people a story behind donations they make, and that whole work really excited me. But at the same time I was quite far away from really development aid and also developing countries. I actually traveled with Oxfam to Sierra Leone and took a look at some of their projects, which was pretty exciting and cool. And I still think that Oxfam does a lot of things better than many other aid agencies. Okay. But I guess that, and also in combination with the experience I did afterwards, because I worked for a consultancy that was consulting besides many other organizations, the development ministry in Germany and the GIZ. So there was also, I got some more insights into that whole area of government aid. And I think the combination of learning like how does an NGO, an aid agency like Oxfam work, how does the government work, I think from these experiences I came to the concept of folk days, because I found that especially in the area of poverty reduction, which is my main interest and has been academically before, I think it's really hard to find an approach if you yourself as an organization are not for profit. You know, how should you teach people to create a business if you have no idea yourself because you never had to, you know, create a business?
Yep.
So I think I think that's really something that struck me, and so also I would have had the chance to start an NGO or something, but I think that it's really, really important that I'm a for-profit business, and the stuff I teach people, and especially now also in the workshops, you know, we talked a lot about prices. You know, we talked a lot about trade margins, because it's really important that they know how the German market works and what my trade margin has to be in order to, so I can sell a product.
Yeah.
And these kind of insights are often missing if you have non-profit organizations that take care of developing businesses or companies in poor countries. So
yeah,
I guess that's
a big point. I couldn't agree more on this. I think we really need to move away from. I always feel that in the whole sector or the whole area of sustainability, people still have this idea: if you're doing something good, then you should make money with that. And the thing is, I also think this is wrong, because how will you grow it? How also a lot of times people do it maybe on top of their jobs because they need to earn money somehow, then they burn out, or heaps of projects stay in their beta phase forever, and it just doesn't make sense. And also like the aspect that you just mentioned, how will you teach people to become sustainable and profitable when you actually never done it? I think it's a super interesting approach on it. And yeah, basically you nearly answered it. I would have asked also if there has been a certain moment or like a person that really inspired you to eventually turn towards fashion and start FOLKDAYS, but maybe you have to add something on that.
I think it's interesting sometimes for people that so fashion is just, or like the products we sell are just a vehicle. Could have been anything, you know.
Okay, yeah.
The reason why we started off with textiles was because there are a lot of communities in the world, especially poor ones, who still work with textiles. They're easy to ship, and you can create products that you don't need a lot of finishing for. So scarves or even carpets, you know, it's something that you can do in super remote areas. We then extended to some other areas like jewelry, and we have also interior products, but most of them, I mean, still probably 80% of our products are made out of textiles in different forms. You know, might be a stiff jute textile or silk or wool. But so how I got into fashion was really just having a look at what's out there and what can I use this for. I think that I really enjoy having this creative aspect also of crafts and developing designs with the artisans. If we would have chosen something like nuts or oil, that wouldn't really have been the case. So I do enjoy that part definitely, especially since I haven't worked creatively before, and I really felt like that was something that was missing in my life. I actually, when I decided to start FOLKDAYS, I read an article of a magazine that doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but it was an article that was about what motivates people. And there was this one example I still remember, and I think by now I know that it's quite famous example of motivation, because I've heard afterwards that other people saw it in TED Talks or something. So it's about this this girl who was really not very good in school, and one day her mom took her to a dance class, and she discovered that dancing was her big passion, and she was really enjoying it a lot, and started dancing, and suddenly she got really good in school and all other areas of life, because she had, you know, access to something that gave her so much energy because she loved it. So I think that was something that really intrigued me, and also made me decide for myself that my next job after my 5 years of being an employee would have to be something that I actually enjoy doing and not necessarily am good in. You know, sometimes it's different. Usually if you enjoy something a lot, then you get good at one point, but you know, sometimes you don't really remember what you actually enjoyed when you were, you know, not brainwashed through teachers or professors or something. So I think that was something that really impacted, had a very big impact on me, reading that article and actually sitting down and being like, okay, so what do I actually enjoy? Like, what is something that gives me more energy than it takes from me, you know? So that was the That was the beginning of Folk Days.
Awesome. Yeah, I can very well relate to that.
Yeah.
I had similar feelings, definitely. I think I also know this TED Talk. If I can find it, I'll put it into the show notes. Maybe it inspires more people out there to actually really do something that they love. And then it's also, even though maybe, as you say, in the beginning you don't know how to do it, but you find ways to do it. And there's actually chances for everyone, for us to have an impact, but at the same time, like, trying to build up something that you're really, really passionate about. Yeah, I really, really love that. I also love that you look at that side of fashion as being the vehicle, so also see the world full of chances and opportunities, and not only like that it's all going down and I don't know. What's the story behind the name though? Like, how did you come up with that?
There's actually a shop in London that's called Folk, and I always liked folk music, and I really like the word folk because I don't know, it's really hard to pronounce for Germans because everybody wants to pronounce it with the folk. L. But I think what I like about folk is it's a combination of, I mean, folk music is something that is quite political, I think, and at the same time something very traditional, but it can also be reinterpreted in very many modern ways. And so folk I really liked as a word, and then we just brainstormed a lot, like how can we combine it. At the beginning we wanted to call ourselves the Folk Store, but there was already a store that was named very similar, so we were like, okay, that's maybe not a good idea. And then we came up with Folk Days, and actually it was a little bit a combination of, we started off when we didn't have an online shop yet, we started off with a blog where we just were talking about the trips we took. Right. So it was a little bit like a diary, so it kind of made sense to combine it, folk with days. And then we started working with Folk Days as an intermediate. We were like, okay, let's just use this to create the logo and to create our CI,
which is really, really beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. And then at one point it just made so much sense. We were like, perfect. I mean, we're not going to change it anymore because it looks beautiful, makes a lot of sense, and so it was a little bit combination of a lot of hard brain work, and at the same time letting go and being like, okay, we can still change it, everything's good, let's just pick something, and then it just was the perfect match.
I think this is really inspiring, and I think it's also the way to go, not always to overthink everything too much, because otherwise you're never gonna get going. So really inspiring. And speaking of inspiration, you are pregnant. Congratulations. The baby is coming soon. In your heart or in your mind, is this giving your work kind of a whole new meaning, or would you say that?
I probably think it's the other way around, that I think the meaning I've always been looking for, in anything I did, or I mean, it's just something I noticed, that I never was looking for a job that made me earn a lot of money, but mostly about what can give me a meaning, or my life a meaning. I think that one of the reasons when I decided to start Folk Days at that time was also to create a world where having a job that I love and having a family doesn't tear me apart as a woman. I didn't have a lot of role models, I would have to say, in both of my jobs before, and I felt like there's only the decision for women to either tear yourself apart or not have a family. And so I decided for myself that was not something I wanted. I didn't want to have a trade-off between always feeling bad, not having enough time to spend with my kids, and at the same time having, these structures that are built by people who don't take care of their kids, they're mostly men. And it was really something, I was like, okay, I know I'm going to work probably more, but I'm then flexible, right? And I am. I mean, I am. My husband actually also has his own business, so that makes it even easier, because so we will split the time with our kid 50-50. And this was something that would have been a lot more difficult before, because now I can take the half a day off and then work more at night, or just try to make things happen in between, and that kind of flexibility makes it a lot more possible to not go crazy, I think.
Nice. Yeah, it totally makes sense as well, and it's very encouraging as well. All right, now let's get a bit deeper into how you manage to put all these great visions and values about like more sustainable world into action. I mean, I already said I love the way you work. I'm a huge travel addict myself. I love to really dive deep into other cultures. And the way you tell the stories from the source countries and the people on your website, that just really, really touches me. Could you give us a bit of an insight into the relationship you have with the artisans you work with?
So a lot of the artisans I work with are, I mean, all of them are from the countries I work in. And usually I work with social entrepreneurs from these countries who help the grassroots artisans to actually develop a business, because as you might guess, if you're a weaver in Takeo province, you have never done an export, so how would you know? So usually we work through people who started social businesses, fair trade businesses in their own countries. They're usually, I'd say, around my age. I mean, sometimes we also work with very old school fair trade organizations where people are a little bit older, and usually they are not the ones that are really great in terms of design, so we give them a lot of input on that. But in general, I focus a lot on finding these people who understand and know the concept of fair trade and really decided to give something back to their communities and are also really intrigued by crafts. So I work with these people, and I mean, I'd say some of them are probably by now something close to friends.
Nice.
I think they are, I mean, sometimes I'm lucky and I see them quite regularly. There's this one siblings couple from Peru, Gabby and Mariela, and they took over the family business from their parents, and they sometimes come to fairs, so I get to meet them there. I also visited them, of course, in Peru. But so yeah, it's really, I think it's a relationship that's built on trust a lot. So so from both sides, we really have to rely on each other. But it's also something that is really, I mean, it's working super well. I often, when I talk about my artisans, a lot of people want to hear typical stories, what can all go wrong when you work with other cultures. And I never really have examples because it doesn't really happen that stuff goes very wrong, at least not in my sense, because going wrong would mean for me that we produce something that is very horrible in quality and I can't sell. And I've never had that. I mean, all my artisans have great quality, so what can happen, what the worst can happen is that the color is a tiny bit different, and I'm like, okay, I can still sell it, so it's really, and also, I mean, you can still, we once ordered buttons from Italy, actually, when we did start doing a lot of the clothing, because we wanted vegan buttons that were not made out of plastic. And actually there was one of the only orders I remember that went wrong, and it was Italy, it was Europe. And so it's really,
it's totally, I think this totally connects to, like, just before the interview we were talking about like mindset, and also I mean, if you already go to a foreign country, and then especially a developing country, and people have this idea in their head, what if they don't produce a good quality, and you search out for those things, and it's all these prejudices, and you're like so much more open-minded with that. And as you say, I mean, it can like happen in any country. We are all kind of the same.
And what we also try to do is that we really try to focus on the strengths, right? So also the products we develop with them are always based on what they do well, and not
that's good
creating a design and then saying, okay, who can do it? But always taking into consideration what's the material they have locally available, what's the coloring they have, what can they color, and also what kind of ingredients do they have, and then the probability that something goes wrong is a lot lower if you take all these things into consideration. And I think that's something that a lot of people I know who've done something similar, who are trying something similar, who don't have the same approach in that sense, that they try to focus more on
Yeah, totally. I mean, I love this approach as well of really, I mean, I think this is really the key here of keeping their traditional handicrafts, what they're really specialized in, alive, while at the same time combining them with simple and modern designs that people here will love. And one aspect I think is great about that, we already I think touched on it before, is really empowering the people to build up a sustainable income. Can you talk a bit more about that emphasis of empowerment? Mm-hmm. I mean, you basically said already that it's like it's the key. It's the key of why you exist, right?
Yeah. I mean,
you're teaching them as well. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I wouldn't necessarily call it teaching because since I'm not a consultant anymore, I try to not teach anymore, teach people. But I think it's just making their own strengths visible to themselves sometimes. You know, if you grow up in a community and everybody has always been good in weaving, and you know, then you might not really consider that a skill or something that is valuable. But if I come and, you know, that's also something that's kind of neat sometimes if I'm then in quite remote areas, just the way, you know, I think they feel appreciated by me coming all the way to look at their products, you know, and be fascinated by what they do. They're like really surprised and sometimes don't really get my fascination with it because for them it's so normal, you know. It's like we all know how to, I don't know, you know, do a PowerPoint presentation and they all know how to weave. So I think in that sense it's quite nice to see how they feel appreciated by me looking at their things and, you know, buying them, of course.
Totally.
So I think sometimes it's just a question of making this visible, you know, making the value and strength visible. And then, I mean, everything else comes from that, and usually you don't need a lot to...
I love that idea because it's, I mean, this is again something where we are all pretty similar, right? Yeah. It's like a lot of people here are not aware of their skills and they don't know. If you know something very well and you've always known it but never talked about it or so, then you think, well, the whole world knows how to do this, so why should anyone be interested in it? And it's the same there. It just
sometimes you need to tell people.
Yeah, exactly. And how many countries or how many artisans do you have?
I think we have 18 countries and 26 artisans at the moment.
Wow, that's a lot. All right, I mean, speaking about traveling, I strongly believe myself that there is a connection also between traveling and eco-minded life attitudes. How do you think about that? Would you also say that people who travel more are more open towards sustainable lifestyles or moving towards, I don't know, a greener future?
I think it has a lot to do with the way you travel. I mean, for me it was at one point I stopped traveling because it really bothered me having this really strong contrast between, or feeling bad about, on the one hand, being a source of economic income for very poor communities and at the same time also destroying it through that, you know? Yeah. So as an example, my husband told me that when he was traveling, I never, like from one point on, I just decided not to backpack anymore because I felt like I couldn't handle that kind of, you know, imbalance, or it's not even an imbalance, it's maybe a tension, you know? So my husband went travel with a friend of his to Vietnam, and they visited one of the Hmong villages that everybody goes to, and then you have a little tour, and he was like, it was quite interesting. He told me that it was quite interesting because the people weren't really interested in tourists and they were all kept to themselves, and you know, there were two people who could speak some English and who gave them a tour, but you didn't really have the feeling, you know, anybody wanted to open up or, you know, hang out with you or whatever, or take your money. And I was like, yeah, but that sounds really depressing to be, you know. So now this project we did with the Goethe Institute, actually a friend of mine who I did the project with, she's a designer, she went to one of these Hmong villages because she was actually working with an artisan business from Vietnam, and she stayed with them for like 4 nights or something, and she learned, you know, a little bit about batik and wax printing. And it was just so fascinating for me to listen to her and how she described, you know, them all sleeping in one big room, and how, you know, the one girl was pregnant and she was living with her husband in the same room as the I don't know, it was just so, I couldn't stop listening because I was so fascinated how she got this kind of insight that would, that is so rare, so rarely, and also in a very appreciative way, because she was there to learn from them, and even in Vietnam, a lot of people, especially if they're not Hmong, they look down on certain tribes, and I think for them it sounded like an experience that I would have loved as well, and I might be in the position sometimes to also have that, but just describes exactly what I love about folk days, that that you really get access, and not only as a museum visitor, but
that's a good term for it. I mean, totally. I also totally speak of like this kind of deeper forms of travel, which obviously not many people out there do, but should do more. I mean, always depending how. Like I'm at the moment, I'm just reading the book Vagabonding, or I listened to it on Audible. It's from Rolf Potts, and it's about exactly that. And it's just I studied sustainable tourism, and after that I really tried to travel that way as much as I could. But these kind of things, it's more like actually experiencing and living with respect, with mutual respect and openness for learning and so on.
And staying with somebody for longer than not having these check marks and being like, but it's actually also, I always had that, and that's why my husband and I stopped traveling together, because it always bothered me that he had all these stops he wanted to do, and I was like, if I can stay in this one village for 3 weeks, I would much more enjoy that. And of course they didn't get together very well, so he started traveling with other people, which was totally fine for me. But I think now we'll see. I mean, if we now have the baby, I think he will have to come to some of the trips I take, because might be a lot easier for me if he's around. And I think he might also just have a little bit of access to my world, because
that's nice.
It's also funny, because at the beginning somebody told me, Isa, who worked with me, she was like, it would be cool if you can send some beautiful images we can use on Instagram. And then I was like, I tried that, but it was really hard, because most of the regions I travel in are quite poor, and it's not like, of course there are always palm trees everywhere, but it's not, the huts are not very beautiful, there are no nice hotels, there are no pools. So if you look at travel blogs, that's none of what I see. I mean, sometimes there are exceptions, and then you have this really romantic small tribal village, but usually it doesn't look like that. So it's really also a different side of the countries I see.
That you can see, yes. But I think it's the people as well that would work, maybe also in images, which kind of links me back to the FOLKDAYS website as well, folkdays.com. You guys obviously put a lot of work and effort and passion into that. And since I've known FOLKDAYS, I've been fascinated by it, because it's just filled with with super nice photos, like of the people, journals with story that really take people behind the scenes of how you work and who the manufacturers are, and B, really transport that colorful, ethnic, world-centric vibe, that I personally link to FOLKDAYS. How important are these visual elements and personal stories for you as a green brand and in communication?
It's super important. I think, sometimes sometimes you don't really know, how important is it to have all these stories, and then, you talk to people and they're like, wow, I love this, and that you can learn so much about these different cultures and crafts and techniques. I mean, we still have the challenge that quite a lot of the picture material is not of excellent quality, because, usually I don't have money to pay a photographer to go someplace, but usually... But
that's real.
That's either their pictures or my pictures, and I'm not a very good photographer.
That's awesome.
So...
I think they're awesome.
So I think it's what we have to deal with, and that's fine. I mean, this links a little bit to what you said at the beginning. Sometimes you just have to get going at one point, and not, if you're a perfectionist, then you'll never be a good business person, because you'll never start, so...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I also think that people, there's a huge trend, of course, towards authenticity, and not making maybe every image shine out, like with things like Instagram stories and all these things that like show you in a bit more raw environment and so on. So and I also think that communicating that out really and as I said, the stories behind those things, that people love this transparency, that they can see, okay, there's also nothing to hide. I can really trust them. And yeah, right. Turning back to the people factor, something I learned from me over the last years is the importance to surround yourself with the right people, and looking at the way you work with your team as well. I guess your friends, also you saying this about the friendly relationship with the manufacturers. I somehow have a feeling that you can relate to that, how much power it gives you to surround you with the right people. Is that right?
Totally, yeah. It's also something that I wanted to change coming from my old jobs. And I mean, it's not that I didn't like my colleagues, it wasn't the problem at all, but I think if you can choose who you spend most time with, you know, the people you pick are usually not the ones that you sit next to at work. So my goal was and still is to create a world where basically there are no assholes around, you know, on any side. I mean, our customers are really great, and everybody who works here is super cool and really nice, and also all our artisans and our business partners are. So it's really, I'm in a very unique position of not spending any time with people I dislike, you know, and this is something that makes me personally very, very happy and comfortable, and I've never been in a position like that in my life. So
awesome.
It's really something that I care for a lot, and I try to stay very true to my goal of having only people around me that I enjoy.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think this is also super important, and now we kind of have this possibility, or we created it, to not, in the business world, not go over this, but okay, it has to be business and it's all serious and
2 words.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, exactly. And did you have to deal with a lot of naysayers or pessimists kind of when you started it, be it like from the business world or friends or family, or people who say, look how bad the world is and how should I make a difference, or
I guess it's just a personality question, right? I mean, there are always people around. I wouldn't say I have a lot of them in my nearest environment, but there are always people who see the world darker than I, and I think I'm an optimist, and I'm a it's not humanitarian, but it's humanist. A humanist. I don't know how you say that in English. So
I don't know either now.
So I believe in progress.
Yes,
I don't believe in everything goes to shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course some people questioned if this is a good idea, and especially, I mean, I started FOLKDAYS when I was 30, so everybody's like, are you crazy? You have a safe job. Everybody likes you at work. You're doing a good job, so why would you, go take that step of insecurity? And I was like, well, I'm not happy, and if I don't do it now, maybe later it's going to be more difficult. So yeah, I don't also think that they do it because they don't believe in me, but they're just,
Worried.
It has a lot to do with how you grow up, and my parents and my brother and my sister, they are all very, active people. I think maybe that's the line I would draw about people that are more passive and have stuff happening to them and they don't know how to get out of it and they don't feel like it's in their own power. Then you have active people who actually influence their own destiny and also have the feeling that if they're not happy, that there's always a way to lift themselves out of that. So I think that's maybe the line. But I didn't take it personally. Even close friends of mine were like, I don't know if you can do it, and so it was interesting. It was just, for me, it was more like, okay, interesting. He's that kind of person.
Yeah, that's nice.
And she's that kind of person, and try not to judge them too much.
Yeah, there's so many points that I can just totally sign and totally relate to. It's really awesome, first of all, being open-minded, not judging people just because they're different and they may have different views. And really this point of not letting life happen to you, but more from you, like being active. We all have so many possibilities now. Like people always think it's the worst time ever, but it's actually not. It's, of course, there's a lot of things happening, but there's also the media aspect, of course. But we all should think again about how much power we have and what we can do with our lives, and not just being kind of controlled by some system there. Yeah, I really, really like that. Right. What's the next step in the Folk Days story? Is there any big thing planned apart from, of course, you having a baby?
Well, I actually have to say I really enjoyed the project we did with the Goethe Institute. So I'd like to do something like that also in the future. I feel like it's valuable for us as a company, but also it maybe makes also the stuff we learn more visible and accessible to others. So I'm really intrigued by maybe doing more kind of consultancy project in the sense of, you know, trying to figure out how crafts businesses from developing countries can survive and can maybe prosper in the future. And besides that, I mean, we are always planning new things and new campaigns, and we're now working with a couple of women we feel inspired by and they feel inspired by us, so we produce or we will develop products with them. So there's always stuff to come, but I think it's still, I mean, we are still a small business. It's really challenging. It's really something that takes a lot of energy from all of us, and everybody's always in 120% or more. So I think that's something I really needed to learn and also still have to learn, especially now when I have a small baby, is not to have too high expectations and push myself too hard, because, you know, then, I don't know, you get also to a point where your physical energy is not there anymore, and I think that's something that is especially important if you are doing something you love, that you sometimes forget that even if you do something you love, you need to recharge sometimes, and and I think that's really dangerous to forget. So
tell me about it.
It's probably so we'll see, but I think I want to make Folk Days as big as possible, because I see so much potential in it, and but of course there are also a lot of things we have to figure out, because it's not easy, you know, to build up a business like that, especially in a market that is totally overloaded. I mean, fashion, or I mean, you can imagine it's one of the biggest markets at all, and then finding your space and you know, actually reaching people you think are interested in your products is something that is a big challenge, especially if you don't have a giant marketing budget. So
do you see Berlin as a good base for that? Basically, I mean, do you see Berlin's role in the green fashion scene? Would you say it's pushing? Or
I think Berlin is really important for us. It was super important because I don't think in a lot of other cities in the world we could have created this. I mean, we started off with our first office space that cost 120 euros a month. You know, it was just a room, a tiny room. So I think the costs, I mean, of course they're changing, but they're still quite low, and you find a lot of people who are willing to maybe also work for less money if they can do something they actually enjoy and really, you know, believe in. So I think that's something that also is really unique to Berlin, because also their living expenses is not as high as, say, living in London or Paris or Munich. I think what is the disadvantage of Berlin is definitely that people also have less money to spend. You know, if we do pop-up shops in Munich or in Hamburg, people just have more money. You can tell, you know, they come in, and in Berlin it's like somebody comes back 3 times because they can't decide if they want to buy a beanie for 59 euros. But in Munich, you know, they just they are 21 and they buy 3 cashmere scarves for their family for Christmas, you know, so it's really
I can imagine that. I think this is a big challenge. I think just as you say, that there's a huge openness, and people just want to make a change and they want to support good projects, and there's like this whole eco trends as well. But definitely the money and the spending power is a problem for the food scene, for the fashion scene, for everything that you kind of buy. That's true. But I mean, how important is it for you though to still have that physical store here in Berlin, in Kreuzberg?
I think it's nice because you meet a lot of people and also your target group, which is also really handy because before that we only had their names basically when they was buying online, and maybe sometimes somebody would write us an email and say how much they like us. But I think it's really nice to actually check out who's coming in here, what are they wearing, how are they dressed, are we actually reaching the target group that we wanna reach, and at the same time it's of course also a space that provides us with the opportunity to invite people, you know. We sometimes have talks here. So, for example, for the Goethe project, we had this little event where the artisans and the designers were presenting what they were doing during the project, and so it's really also a space that gives us as a team, but also our customers access to our world, and so and it's an income source. I mean, we do have customers here, and they come very targeted, so they usually looked at the stuff online already, or they know us already. I'd say 90% of the people who come in here know FOLKDAYS already. But yeah, it's really I think it was a really good decision, and I still enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean, you really create a platform as well with it, and to kind of bring together people, but also other artists. I was recently here at a really nice pop-up event as well, and that's great. I mean, what makes you, maybe to finish this part off, what makes you feel most excited about living here, maybe in Berlin? Like, what do you love most about the city?
I don't know, it's really hard to say. It's I think a couple of weeks ago I had a conversation with two friends who are now moving to Munich because the family of one lives there, and also he likes the mountains and blah blah blah. So we had a long discussion about, you know, why Berlin and why. I told him I'm never gonna leave again, and he was like, yeah, but why? I mean, all these hipsters in Kreuzberg and blah blah blah. And I was just like, I don't see that. I mean, I don't, like, my world is so perfect here. I mean, of course I know that I live in a giant bubble, but so I live in Neukölln, I work in Kreuzberg, my husband has his office right around the corner. It's really, I don't know. I actually described the scene to him, and I'm not sure if he actually understood what I meant with it, but 1st of May is also always mayhem here, but it was a funny situation when Nico and I, my husband and I, we walked home from this party, and I was already pregnant, so I wasn't drunk, but we went through Görlitzer Park, and there was suddenly, like, around this corner was this huge rave, and it was crazy with thousands and thousands of people, and I don't know how they got the sound system there or who organized it, and a whole bunch of people just randomly sold alcohol, like, you know, some were clearly, you know, had a migrant background, some people were just, you know, some of them looked homeless, you know, everybody was just making a little money on the side. And there was, like, I don't know, around two corners there were a bunch of policemen with, like, full on armor, and everybody was just so peaceful and celebrating. And, you know, we used to live in London for a while, and I imagined, you know, if it would have been there would have been so many fist fights and stuff, because people were really drunk, you know. A lot of people were, I don't know, just peeing and you know, but it was just this really chaotic, creative, but also really active, because you know, somebody took care of this, and probably a whole bunch of people organized it, and it was just this, you know, quick moment where I thought, this is really why I like Berlin so much, because it gives space for this. And that doesn't mean, like, I love Berlin because you can party all the time, but it's just, you know, the policeman could have stepped in, you know. There could have been a lot more destructive energy, but everybody was just partying together. And it was just this really nice moment that made me fall in love with Berlin again. And I mean, I've been here for a while. I mean, I came here after my A-levels basically, so I've been here for 15 years or something. But these moments, and especially you have them in the summer, where you're just like, wow, this is just doesn't feel like Germany at all. It's some other planet, but people are more relaxed and less spießig, and
that just completely makes my heart jump as well, because it's like totally those moments people just make things happen, and also this peacefulness, and everyone kind of coexists so nicely together. People from outside are always impressed. My mom is always impressed when she comes visit me here. I'm from Leipzig, which is also
cool.
nice, but yeah, but still, like there's not so much, and yeah, that was beautiful. All right, now we're coming to the final little bit. I think you shared so many really, really great stories with me. I don't want to stretch your time too much further, but there's just a couple of questions that I always ask all my interview guests, which is the first one. What was your biggest learning so far?
That probably the biggest enemy I am to myself.
Yes.
So I think being happy has a lot to do with making yourself happy, and also being nicer to yourself and being more loving to yourself, and actually believing that you can do stuff. So, and also, I guess that goes hand in hand, is not being angry at yourself when you make mistakes. Because if you do a lot, I mean, there's this German saying, wer viel macht, macht viel falsch. And I was always like, well, I don't consider that, valuable or whatever.
No,
but it's
true.
really something that I do so many things for the first time. Every time I start something new, that I have to be more relaxed with myself and to also do mistakes. I'm very bad in that, but I've gotten a lot better, and that makes me more happy.
Yeah, man, it's so crazy, but it's just like it so speaks out of me too, and it's really weird. But about this, I've just been thinking so much lately, and now you just say this, it's really fun. Second question: if you could change one thing in Berlin within the next 24 hours, what would it be?
That's a hard one. I would probably make all public transportation for free. I think that would be handy.
Yeah. To have less cars? Or?
Yeah.
Totally. Oh, yes.
I find it so annoying how many cars are there everywhere, and especially if I cycle mostly, but I think I was just in, where was that? In a city in San Sebastian. They had a lot of underground parking, of course, but there was just so few cars on the streets, and it was just so amazing to have so much more space for people.
I imagine that's a good one. Yeah, I'd sign that. I'd step up with this with you. All right. Now, what question should I have asked you but didn't?
I mean, a question a lot of people often ask me, and I think it's a quite interesting one, is maybe also, founding as a woman, I mean, we talked about family, but also in terms of, I mean, I don't know how the recent statistics for Berlin are, but I think it's still somewhere between 5 to 8% of all companies are only founded by women. So I don't know, I tend to now, I mean, I try to take part in programs where I go to schools or they come here, and then I try to talk about being a founder, and of course it's obvious that I'm a woman, and I try to really encourage young women to go that path, because I think it's a pity. There are a lot of areas in this world that need changing, and I think starting a business is always a good way to do that. And especially now having a baby, I realize that so many areas there's so many problems unsolved, and I think women starting businesses or even organizations would solve a lot of problems that are not taken care of because men don't see them because they're not in that world, So,
do you mean in more having a bit more empathy and a bit more things
and also
this?
I mean, although I try to divide all the tasks up already between my husband and me 50-50, but looking for a kita spot or stuff like that, I mean, you have to take care of that quite early in Berlin, and there are so many unfunctionalities or not functioning things or systems I witness, and I'm like, this is crazy. I mean, if this was an area where a lot of men would if this was a system a lot of men would interact with, they would probably, some of them would be like, okay, we have to change this because it doesn't make sense, it's very inefficient, and it's also not good for society, so let's try to make a business idea out of it. So I think that's something that I notice a lot now, that there are a lot of problems to be solved in general in the world, but also in a city like Berlin, in terms of having kids, also childcare, I don't know, and I think,
and female entrepreneurs
doing and I think female entrepreneurs have a lot of other spaces in this world where they can solve problems, but I think just in terms of social mobility and also giving people from maybe lower social background or migration background access to certain systems is something that I find very important, and I think there's still
really good point.
Yeah, a lot to do.
Really, really good point. Alrighty, last question. If there was one thing that you could pass on to the people out there, to the listeners, to the Dreamy Berlin community, what would it be?
I think it's probably that people, or I hope that people can start being a little better to themselves and a little more kind and a little bit more loving. And I think that would already make the world a better place and people more happy. So just be kind to yourself.
Ah, beautiful, Lisa. Lisa, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. I'm super inspired through all your words and like seeing also this kind of sparkles in your eyes when you talk about what you do. I really, really have a deep respect for you guys, and it makes me happy that Berlin is home to such dedicated people like you. And yeah, I mean, you're really the proof that it is possible to build up a successful brand and at the same time also operating in a kind, sustainable and human way, actually. So yeah, thank you so much for all your creativity and your power and wholeheartedness. And yeah, thanks for spreading it on, and hopefully many, many people out there get inspired by this.
Thanks for all your good questions.
Thank you. Oh my God, I am in love with this city and all those passionate, creative people it attracts, really. Hope you're feeling equally inspired by the amazing work that Lisa does with her team and her artisans. Make sure to swing by at the shop in Manteufelstraße in Kreuzberg as soon as you can. And until then, soothe your curiosity and wanderlust by checking out this beautiful, beautiful website, folkdays.com. If you enjoyed this episode, it'd be beautiful, beautiful if you share it out with your friends, and I always love to hear from you too. So send me any thoughts, questions or feedback, either as a comment on dreamy.berlin.com/podcast-folkdays, or message me on Facebook, Twitter, send me an email, whichever you feel most comfortable with. And before you go, I got a little secret to announce already, because I'm teaming up again with my friend Ari from the Green Fashion Tours, as we'll be hosting our second Circular Economy Tour plus Zero Waste dinner. This time we're exploring the wild wedding, and it's all happening on the 17th of August here in Berlin. So if you're interested in joining, watch out on the Dreamy Berlin Facebook page under events, as we put all the details live over the weekend. And one last, I promise, quick shout out. If you want to stay up to date with the latest interviews, green events and fresh content from me and my explorations through Berlin's green scene, then make sure to sign up for my monthly newsletter. I got a little thank you if you do so. I'll send you my best of guide to 7 of my favorite eco-minded places in the city for free. To get it, just hop over to dreamyberlin.com/newsletter. Alrighty folks, that's it. Now go out and have the most amazing day ever, and of course always remember to keep it green.